Hello everybody, my name is Tanner Kyler and today's plant is commonly known as the ponytail palm. Um, its Latin name is Beaucarnea recurvata. This plant is native to the semi-arid regions of southeastern Mexico, country of Guatemala, and Belize. This ponytail palm I have right here. I got it when it was about half this size. I've had it for about 4 or 5 years, and I started it when I was really young, and I up-potted it pretty quick into this larger pot. It's grown in very well. It's about time for a repotting. Its roots are starting to kind of expose here in the top of it, but it has these 3 main trunks. The ponytail palms can get 30 feet in height. When they get to that size, they look kind of crazy. This plant does bloom. I've never seen mine bloom, probably because I don't fertilize it often enough, because over-fertilizing can be a problem. So make sure when you fertilize it in low doses. It enjoys full sun. In the winter time, I don't particularly keep it in a lot of sun. I moved it over here into the sunlight right now. But for the majority of the winter, it's been sitting right over here in a darker location. And it seems to do fine as long as you don't water it throughout the winter. It really doesn't grow much, but then you put it out in the spring outside where it can get full sun. You water it. It's heat tolerant, extremely heat tolerant. Here in Oklahoma, you know, we have summer days where it gets up to like 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and this plant does amazing in it. Being native to, you know, southeastern Mexico, it makes sense that it would be tolerant to the heat. It can bloom, like I said, but odds of it doing it, I guess, are more rare than I think. And like I said, I probably need to fertilize a little more to get it to bloom, but I've seen pictures. I'm going to put one up in the screen right here, and they're absolutely stunning when they go into bloom. It gets this like golden shower of flowers above it. It looks kind of like, you know, your common yuccas and stuff, but it's a little bit more fibrous and a little bit more showy. These are good house plants. They're really good at purifying the air. They require very low watering. They like their soil to get 100% dry between waterings. And this is very important because a lot of people, when they get these plants, they start watering it too much and the leaves start to turn brown. And so if this is a problem, and that's why you're watching this video, if your leaves are turning brown, stop watering it so much. And if it starts to get this yellowish kind of tapered look, this one's still okay. But if yours starts to stretch out and get real yellow, almost white colored leaves, it needs more sun, and you're not going to get enough sun. Because that's another big thing is if you live in an apartment or something that doesn't have a very good sunny window, you're going to have to figure out something. But like I said, it's fine for the winter if it comes inside because it can't tolerate the cold. I've read that it can survive down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, but it gets colder than that here in Oklahoma where I live, and so I don't trust it. So I bring it in whenever the threat of frost comes. So anytime it's going to drop below 32, that's when this thing comes in. It stays in all winter long. And it survives without any sunlight, but like I said, I don't water it really all winter long. And as this size, if it's younger, you might need to water it a little bit. You might notice the trunk starts to shrink up, but this trunk is really big here. It's about the size of a coconut. And so I'm not worried about it drying up throughout the winter. Just like any other cacti or succulent, something that's really important with this plant is that you make sure it has well-draining soil. It needs to have plenty of volcanic stone. You want to have pumice or perlite or anything that's well-draining. You want to have, I normally use a 1/3 mix of sand, peat, moss, and perlite. And that's a really well-draining mix. It seems to work well with my cacti here in Oklahoma. I've heard you can grow a lot of cacti in straight sand or propagate them in straight sand, but I know it can cause problems in more humid regions. Something to do with the sand, I'm not really sure what it is. I've just heard that you're not supposed to use straight sand. I mean, I have in the past and it's worked, and but I will say they grow a lot better with more organic material, you know, a little bit more nutrients. They still need some organic material. Their pot, they just want to make sure that the water travels through the pot. You want it, you know, as you water it, you want it to be leaking out within 30 seconds after, which can be a bit of a headache if, you know, you're indoors and you're trying to the especially if the soil's become so dry, it's become kind of hydrophobic. It becomes kind of a nuisance to water because then it tends to soak along the cracks of the pot where the soil has shrunk a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of a pain. But what I would recommend is either soaking it in water if you need to water it in the winter, or just waiting until spring and letting it get a good rain. Or because I mean that's the best thing for it. I really don't water this plant that often. Um, if we go more than a couple weeks without um, rain in the summer, I'll give it a little splash. But for the most part, we get enough rain here in Oklahoma, far more than what it would be receiving in the wild, and it does great. Now, if you want to grow a little faster, water a little bit more, but remember, let it dry out between waterings, or it will get root rot. Your leaves will start rotting, and your plant will eventually die, and it'll be no good. And like this one here, I've been taking care of for several years. Of course, you don't want to kill this thing, as you don't want to kill any of your houseplants, but if you end up growing it for a long time, you should be fine. But you don't want to grow it up because these things can live to be well over 100 years old if taken care of properly. If I had to guess, I would say this one's around 10 years old because I've had it for a couple, like, 4 or 5 years now. And I bought it when it was probably already, like 5 years old. And so, this is probably about a 10-year-old specimen here. So, uh, it's gonna take some time for it to get to this size because a lot of them what that you see in the you go buy them at stores is that they're much smaller than this one. I was lucky to get my hands on a larger one for a cheap price, and I took the bargain. And I love this plant ever since. This is one of my favorite plants. It does this really cool thing. Now in the summer, I noticed that the wind normally beats it up quite a bit, so it doesn't get this pretty fountain-like growth. Its tips seem to die a little bit in the summer due to the heat and the wind. Um, but in the wintertime and in the springtime, it grows this nice spire out and has this nice fountain shape. And this will last a lot of the time throughout the winter. Um, but then once I put it out in the spring, we'll get a few storms come through. Here in Oklahoma, it's a very windy state. And so it'll beat up my plant a little bit. It never has killed it. I mean, you can see down here, these are probably over year old leaves, maybe 2 year old leaves, and they're not dying back too hard. Now this is at the very bottom, so these leaves will die, and as they die, your trunk will grow taller, as you can see. And that's kind of another interesting point, is that you'll keep getting taller and taller. And this is basically all new growth since I've owned the plant, and see it's grown quite a bit. And now that it's gotten to this size, it's growing quicker, and I need to up pot it if I want it to get much bigger. And that becomes the biggest problem with these plants, is if you don't have a greenhouse, this is not the plant for you, most likely. I don't have a greenhouse yet. Now, that said, if you keep it in a small pot, it will not get big. If I keep it in this pot, it'll keep growing, but it'll never get taller than me, most likely, um, because the pot is going to confine it to that specific amount of space it can grow. So if it can't grow down or out, it can't grow up. And so if you want to keep it small, just keep it in a pot, repot it every 2 or 3 years, clean up the roots. You want to, scrape a lot of the roots off and kind of damage and disturb them, and then repot it. Back in the same pot you got it in, and it should grow a little bit more. But not too much. If you just leave it in a pot for too long, it'll become root bound and it'll eventually die. Um, but yeah, this is one of my favorite specimens here. It's a really easy plant to care for, in my opinion. Um, I can forget about it all winter. I can forget about it all summer. The only time, that I ever have to stress or worry about this plant is in the winter when it gets cold and I have to bring it in. And it's not that big of a worry because I have much more sensitive plants. Like I have a euphorbia right over here next to me. Can't see it's out of the shot, but it can only survive down to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If it gets, slightly too chilly at night, it could kill or damage the plant severely. This plant, even if it gets below freezing, it's not going to harm it. And that might be great if you live in areas in like the deep south, further south than me in Oklahoma. If you live in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, as long as it's not getting too much water, you can leave it outside all year long and it won't die. Most likely make sure it gets southern exposure. If you're putting it outside all winter, it needs to get plenty of sun to keep it warm, because I know down in the deep south, you guys still have a little bit of chilly nights. It's never, you don't have perfect winters. I know you get snow every once in a while. So if it ever gets around, down to around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, I would worry about the plant a little bit. It could take some damage. I'd bring it inside if I were you. But yeah, if you have a sliding glass window, a big a big southern exposure window somewhere in your house, that's the place for this plant. But as goes for most cacti, they want a lot of sun. And so you're not going to hurt it by giving it too much. You're going to kill it by not giving it enough. That's everything you need to know to care for this plant. It's not a lot. Um, I would say that it's definitely a great beginner cacti or succulent. Um, it's not the easiest, but it's not the hardest either. And I wouldn't even say it's even close to being one of the hardest or even moderately difficult. I would still say it's on the easy side. I have some cacti that are very picky about what they want. They can't tolerate too much heat. They can't tolerate too much cold. They can't tolerate too much sun, but they want sun, and it can become kind of a hassle to keep some of those alive. And I've definitely lost my fair share of plants, but I'm very proud of keeping this one alive for so long, and I hope to keep it for the rest of my life. I'd like to see this thing mature into a nice 20 to 30 foot tall ponytail palm. I want it to be kind of a, if I ever have a greenhouse, I want it to be kind of a spectacle in there and have those nice blooms. Um, Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to learn more about plants and cacti and succulents and other plants that I have in my collection. I'm going to keep posting these videos. And if you would like to support this channel, subscribing is the best way to do that. And the majority of my viewers are not subscribed. So if you really would like to support this channel, that's the best way of doing it. I really thank anybody who subscribes, and I enjoy you for just watching this video. Leave a comment for other things you would like to see or any questions you have about this, and have a great day.